Well, we'll go mic'd up now as Louisiana football gets set to go on the road to play Texas State. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff in San Marcos. And tonight, our mic'd up guest is the voice of the Raging Cajuns. He's Jay Walker, and you can follow him on Twitter at UL Cajuns Voice. Jay, I appreciate you coming on. When was the last time you missed a Cajuns football game?
I want to say it was my niece's wedding. And I think it'll be 3 years ago next week. She got married. She lives in South Carolina, and I missed a game against South Alabama in Mobile so I could attend her wedding.
Cajuns playing Texas State. They're a 16.5-point favorite. Louisiana has never lost to the Bobcats. It feels not so much as a matter of if they'll beat the Texas State, but how much they'll beat Texas State by. What do you think is a score that would satisfy this fan base who feels a lot like this team has underachieved so far?
I think it would have to be a lot to a little, and honestly, Andrew, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think this game's going to be closer than maybe even the so-called experts think. Texas State's much improved offensively from a year ago. And everybody's got to remember that they've played 5 in a row on the road. And so the games that they've played at home, a 7-point loss to SMU and an overtime loss to UTSA, I think they're going to be excited to be at home. I think they're going to play well, and I think the Cajuns will win. But I think whatever you said, 16.5, whatever it is, that's way too many.
Cajuns have played in a lot of one-score games so far this season. I mean, is that what you see of this game, a one-score game?
Well, possibly. I think it'll probably be a little bit more than that. And what a contrast to last year when the Cajuns won 11 games and only one of them was by one score. The others were, pretty good spankings. So this year has been totally different from what we saw a year ago.
The Cajuns' offense still pretty unimpressive so far this season. They've already been held twice under 300 total yards, something that happened just one time last year, and that was to Appalachian State. What does this offense need to do to finally get going and get clicking?
Yeah, good question. I'm not the coach, and so anything I say should be taken with a grain of salt. I might throw it a little bit earlier. The Cajuns have the reputation of being a great running team, and they've struggled a little bit to run the football, especially in the first half of games. So I might come out and throw a little bit more just to loosen the opposition up and let it open up the running game a little bit. But like I said, there's a reason why I do what I do, and Billy Napier does what he does. It's because he's a lot smarter than I am.
Do you think that after last season, our expectations for this Louisiana football offense particularly are just too high?
Yeah, probably so. I think, you lost 2 very good offensive linemen, but you said, well, we had a couple of guys who were injured last year and they're starters and they're going to come back, and so we're not going to miss a beat. First of all, we're finding out just how good Robert Hunt and Kevin Dotson were. And also, we thought we were going to get Cole Prudhomme back. He hasn't played a snap this year. And the depth on the offensive line isn't quite as much as it's been. In addition, I think that when we started talking about the offseason, we talked about the wide receivers that were coming back. And outside of Jalen Williams and LeBlanc, all of them got hurt and they're all out. And so you're relying on a lot of freshmen. So I think missing those 2 guys on the right side of the offensive line and the depth at wide receiver is probably why this offense hasn't clicked as much as we thought it was going to.
Defensively, Louisiana has been very good the past 2 years, and this year the back 7 has been absolutely phenomenal. Lorenzo McCaskill, Farrard Gardner, Braylon Trahan, Percy Butler, they've all been really, really good in that back 7. How far has this defense come in just a few years under Billy Napier?
Light years. We saw last year how many times the Cajuns gave up a touchdown on the first drive of the game, made some adjustments, and then didn't give up another touchdown until the fourth quarter. We're seeing this team do a very good job of making halftime adjustments, because if you look at points scored in the second half, the Cajuns have been much better than they've been in the first half. And, I think this secondary, maybe not as individuals, but as a group, those 4 guys and 5 when they play the star, that might be as good a group as we've had in a very long time. And um, they've been fun to watch. And I remember the last couple of years under Mark Hudspeth, it's rare that the Cajuns were able to go out and get a turnover, and they're sitting here at +4 so far this year. That's really nice to see.
Yeah, that +4 margin is tied at the top of the Sun Belt. On the other side, Texas State's defense relies heavily on a few key freshmen that have played admittedly very well. But is that something you think Billy Napier will target on game day and go after those freshmen and make them prove it?
Well, you know what? I think it maybe if it turns out that they do throw it a little bit more early, I think it's going to be because of personnel. Texas State's very thin in the secondary, and they've had some injury issues on top of being thin in numbers. And they've got a couple of guys in the 2 deep that may not play this week that are in the backfield. One of their starting corners is actually a safety that they had to move over. So they've got some issues in the back of that defense, and you may see the Cajuns go ahead and throw it a little bit more as a result. But Texas State had some big losses on defense, and they're much better offensively than they were a year ago. But they've taken a step back on defense, and a lot of it is just because of youth and inexperience.
We are talking to Jay Walker, the voice of Ragin' Cajun football. Jay, Louisiana, we were now at the half point of their season, essentially. The 5th game, or I should say the 6th game here is the midpoint of this 11-game season. Who has surprised you so far in the first half?
I don't know about surprises. I think the freshman receivers as a group have been a little bit of a surprise because there's a lot of depth in that freshman class that I wasn't sure that they had. But, when you see them rotate, 8, 9, 10 guys, and 5 and 6 of them are freshmen, I mean, the future's very, very bright there. Cam Pedesclo is a guy that I think has really made great strides as a football player from last year to this year. This is a guy who walked on and earned a scholarship last year, and now is playing extremely well. And I'm not sure that it's a surprise because that kid plays so hard. But yeah, those would be the guys that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see what I've seen out of them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The freshman receivers have played so well. One final question for you, and I want to ask you kind of about what's happening in Texas in terms of COVID. We've already seen North Texas cancel its game at UTEP coming up this weekend because the numbers in El Paso are so bad. Now, I know it's not a similar situation in San Marcos. That area has had much more fortunate luck with COVID, but is there any chatter that UL could not travel this weekend out of an abundance of caution?
No, I think that, Texas State really had their COVID issues earlier. Their quarterback, Gregory, missed a couple of games at ULM and at Boston College after testing positive. And they had a few other guys that, because of contact tracing, couldn't play then either. From what I understand, and I talked with some of the guys over at Texas State earlier today, from what I understand, they don't have any COVID issues right now. They did say this, though. If by some chance, and I don't know if they tested today or not. I know the Cajuns tested today on Wednesday. But if they were to have some issues in the secondary, they would probably have to go ahead and cancel the game because they just don't have very many numbers there. And so if that particular position got hit, there would be an issue, but to the best of my knowledge, they don't have one right now.
He's Jay Walker, the voice of the Ragin' Cajuns. Jay, I appreciate you coming on, being mic'd up with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.